Before this video starts, I want to apologize. I wanted this episode to come out earlier in the summer. It's literally the end of the summer as I'm recording this. I was busy with some side projects and video gigs, along with suffering from creative constipation and procrastination. Fun times. I've been working on this video since May, and originally wanted this to come out on the 50th anniversary of the release of Jaws, but it's being celebrated all summer long, so fuck it. Enjoy the episode. Spoiler alert. This episode contains spoilers of the topic, probably a movie or TV show. If you want to watch the said movie or TV show without knowing anything about it, stop this video and go watch it, unless you've watched it already. Then continue with the video. Summer is officially back. My winter depression is gone for the time being. Now I can sit back, relax, have a brew, and take in whatever vitamin is produced by the sun. Nice try, Bryce. Not scaring me, dude. Really? Not one bit. Man, I wish I could just be like my cousins. Who are your cousins? Bruce, from Jaws. Are you talking about those three barely functioning mechanical sharks? Hey now, they don't know that. They just think they're old. Yeah, but I'm still trying to understand how the hell you're related. Oh, you know what, never mind, it doesn't even matter. Wasn't that movie filmed like 50 years ago? Yeah, you should do a pointless history episode on it. Well, it is the 50th anniversary after all. Yeah! You're gonna find out about the making and history of the film Jaws on this episode of Pointless History. After I finish my beer.
Alright, now let's start.
Alright, this one I can't spoil too much. Jaws is about a great white shark attacking and killing the people of the fictional place Amity Island, New England, and it's up to Police Chief Martin Brody, oceanographer Matt Hooper, and shark hunter Quint to track down and kill this soulless aquatic killing machine. Jaws was based on a novel of the same title by Peter Benchley. Between procrastination, creative constipation on the title of the story, and inspiration from a story of a fisherman catching a great white shark that weighed over 4,000 pounds, the story would eventually be written, picked up for publishing for a couple bucks, and heard about through the grapevine by Richard Zanuck and David Brown. Brown in particular heard about it in the Cosmopolitan magazine because his wife used to do editing for the company. Brown and Zanuck both read the story, twice I should add, and in unison agreed that this was the most exciting thing that they have ever read and must turn it into a film. They had no clue how the hell they were going to do it, but bought the rights to it anyway before the novel was even published. Finding a director took a couple tries. Brown and Zanuck considered John Sturges at first, then Dick Richards, who kept insisting to make a movie about a whale, which, for lack of better words, f***ing pissed off Brown and Zanuck. So Richards was canned. Maybe he should have directed Orca. They then took a chance on Steven Spielberg. His only feature film directing credits at the time were Firelight, Duel, and The Sugar Land Express, produced by Brown and Zanuck. Spielberg had heard about Jaws and assumed it was about a dentist based on the title. He got a hold of and read the unpublished Jaws novel and thought it was a masterpiece, seeing similarities between Jaws and the film he directed, Duel. Indecisiveness decided to latch on Spielberg like a host, causing him to want to back out of Jaws at first. Zanuck actually brought Spielberg back onto Jaws and motivated him by wearing a t-shirt made for the Jaws film, during a meeting that would have been about Spielberg leaving the project. Peter Benchley ended up writing the first draft of the Jaws screenplay. On behalf of Brown, Zanuck, and Spielberg's agreement with the film, they wanted Peter to focus on the basic plot of Jaws, trashing the novel subplots, like the affair between Ellen Brody and Matt Hooper. Benchley ended up writing 3 drafts, until he threw the towel in and potentially said, according to Spielberg,
"Here it is, and do with it what you want."
Spielberg had a hard time coming up with a vision based on Peter's script, and ended up writing his own draft of the script, just to help himself make sense of the story and how he envisioned it. For extra help on the script, Brown and Zanuck suggested Spielberg go to Howard Sackler, who wrote The Great White Hope. It helped, although Howard had also asked not to be credited on this project. Well, now I'm confused. Did he have confidence in the script or did he not? What the f***, dude? Spielberg also got advice from Sidney Sheinberg, the president of Universal at the time, to develop the script to have a similar straightforward and simple story like Duel. To shape up the script more, Spielberg offered individually John Byram, William Link, and Richard Levinson to rewrite the script. Each of them declined. Finally, Carl Gottlieb, who's a comedy writer and actor, got involved. Gottlieb was originally asked if he wanted a part in the movie. He would go on to play Meadows, but was also asked to smooth out the dialogue and help with improvising, making the acting feel more natural. Well, that turned into him becoming the primary screenwriter. Almost the whole script was changed during principal photography. One of the most quoted lines of the movie,
"You're gonna need a bigger boat,"
was actually improvised. Others that helped out but were not credited for smoothing out the script were John Milius, Matthew Robbins, and Hal Barwood. Instead of hiring big-name actors, Spielberg wanted to go with little-known actors at the time, to make the audience feel that the situation in this film could happen to anyone. Roy Scheider played Martin Brody. Originally, Robert Duvall was offered the role, but was more interested in playing Quint. Charlton Heston was interested, but Spielberg felt he was too big of a star to play this character. Roy Scheider got involved after meeting Spielberg at a party. Roy overheard a conversation between Spielberg and Tracy Keenan Wynn about a scene Spielberg wanted to do for Jaws where the shark would jump onto and break the boat. Roy thought Spielberg was crazy, but became intrigued after he told him the story of Jaws. An agreement was made right then and there that Roy would play Martin Brody. Richard Dreyfuss played Matt Hooper. Others considered for the part were John Voight, Jeff Bridges, Joel Grey, John Michael Vincent, and Timothy Bottoms. George Lucas suggested to Spielberg that Richard Dreyfuss should play this part after working with him on American Graffiti. Dreyfuss was apprehensive at first to board this ship. No pun intended. He knew it was going to be a great movie to watch, but a pain in the ass to shoot. What convinced him to take the role was after seeing the opening of a film he was the lead in called The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz. He more or less
had a heart attack. I had a total nervous collapse. I thought I was awful.
He knew he needed to get a job, so one call later, Dreyfuss got involved with Jaws. Robert Shaw played Quint. Others considered for the part were Lee Marvin and Sterling Hayden. Zanuck and Brown had suggested Robert Shaw after recently working with him on The Sting. Lorraine Gary played Ellen Brody, Martin's wife. She was the wife of Sidney Sheinberg, the president of Universal at the time. Spielberg had seen her in the Marcus Nelson murders, the pilot to Kojak, and thought she was a natural actress. She was the first to be cast in Jaws, along with Murray Hamilton, who played Mayor Larry Vaughn. Spielberg had seen him in the FBI Story and The Graduate. He always wanted to work with Murray and was his first choice for the mayor. Susan Backlini played Chrissy Watkins, Jaws' first victim. For her scene, Susan wore cut-off jeans with cables attached to pull her from each side. Originally, they were going to use an electric winch, but Susan felt it was not the best idea for safety reasons. So they used a little manpower, a step down from horsepower. with cables from each side of Susan going through 2 water pilings, leading to the beach where crew members holding the cable would run back and forth, causing Susan to be pulled back and forth on screen. Susan was also a stunt woman, so it was the perfect role. Lee Fierro played Mrs. Kintner, the mother of Jaws' second victim, Alex Kintner, played by Jeffrey Voorhees. Lee slapped Roy Scheider 17 times to get the right take of her character's anger and despair after her son was just killed by a shark. Peter Benchley had a small role as an interviewer, Alan Cray or Alan Craig.
This is Alan Craig.
I can't really understand what he's saying. He's credited as the interviewer, so we'll just call him that. Funny enough, Peter Benchley was a professional TV interviewer before the making of Jaws. Originally, the crew wanted to film in Jamaica for the clear water. Martha's Vineyard was chosen as the filming location for appearance, class status, surrounding water, and depth. Although it was tough to get permission to film there due to rules and regulations and concern of disturbing the residents with some prop sharks. They eventually got the okay to do it, as long as they cleaned up and put everything back to normal. Extras were residents of Martha's Vineyard. Some of the residents actually played characters in the movie. A great example, Ben Gardner was played by Craig Kingsbury, who was a local in Martha's Vineyard that inspired a lot of characteristics for Quint. They ended up making a life cast mold of his head for his character's severed head discovery. I call bullshit to anybody that claims they didn't get scared by that. For the shark, supposedly someone thought it would be a great idea to train a great white shark, but learned it wasn't a good idea. Really now? I'm curious, what was the lesson they learned? Did someone get their leg bitten off? They went with the safer but more expensive route, creating 3 life-sized great white sharks, all nicknamed Bruce, after Spielberg's lawyer Bruce Rammer. Should have been named Mo, Larry, and Curly. Many were skeptical about the possibility of building prop sharks for Jaws, but they were proven wrong. Art director and production designer Joe Alves put together a team consisting of the motivating and enthusiastic Bob Matty, who made the giant squid for the film 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Roy Arbogast, a special effects artist and expert in rubber forms, made the mold for the shark props. Richard Helmer and Bill Short, potentially James Short, worked on the electrical engineering of the mechanical sharks. And Mike and Gary Woods, who worked on welding the shark props. Ron and Valerie Taylor, who you'll find out in a few, helped out as far as giving comments and advice on how the shark should look and move. They had a sea sled shark, nicknamed by Spielberg the Great White Turd, that was a full-body shark prop that was often attached to a crane arm, to have the shark rise out of the water, with the shark being gimbaled separately and would be towed with a 300-foot line. 2 mechanical platform sharks were used. One for moving from left to right on screen, revealing many pneumatic hoses on its left side, and a reverse version exposing its right side, requiring up to 14 operators to control all of the moving parts. They also had the top fin and tail of the shark attached to what looks like a skeleton shark prop. Everything was constructed at Raleigh Harper's Motion Picture and Equipment Rental in Sun Valley, California. Once these were finished, the sharks went on a cross-country adventure by truck to Martha's Vineyard. Quint's boat, the Orca, was partially designed by the same team. Joe Alves ended up buying a boat originally named the Warlock and built a new wheelhouse on it with bigger windows to look out into the water. They ended up making an identical boat called the Orca 2 that would purposely sink. The film's DP was Bill Butler, who had built some equipment for the movie, including the water box. It was waterproof, but had an open top to control focus and exposure. Bill could film partially underwater, really to get the POV of what a human would see if they were in the water while a great white shark was swimming around, and also attacking a boat. Bill Butler brought up the idea of filming handheld for the movie, which Spielberg was a little apprehensive about, but after seeing a demonstration, he decided that this was the best way to film this movie. Just a disclaimer, this segment is not called Production Heck for no reason. There were ideas about filming in a water tank and designing it to make it look like the sea, but Spielberg wanted the real deal. Filming on the sea is easier said than done. It was great as far as scenery, and the fact that you could see the horizon and no land, really adding to the seclusive feeling that Spielberg wanted to invoke. But really, it led to little annoying things that happened on set, and I say set loosely because they were filming on the open sea. From cameras and equipment getting wet, bullshit weather, and the crew boats, including the Orca, not staying still in the water so they could get the shot. At one point, the orca boat began to sink with the actors, including the sound man, still on it due to an accident. They were trying to accomplish a shot where the shark was swimming towards the orca, hinted by the barrels moving towards the boat. The crew had put an eye hook on one of the boards of the orca, below the surface, with a cable of some kind going through the eye hook to a separate motorboat to pull the barrels toward the orca. The motorboat went too fast, ended up ripping out the board that the eye hook was attached to on the orca, and the boat began to sink. Luckily, everyone got off the sinking boat in time and was safe and sound, including the sound man, John Carter, who is quoted saying, "F the actors, save the sound department." Although there was a scare, because a camera was left on the orca when it was sinking, and it was submerged in the water. The crew was terrified that they had lost what they filmed that day. When developing film, they used a saline solution, essentially salt water, which the camera and film were submerged in during this incident. Thanks to the film's DP, Bill Butler, they rushed to New York on a plane with the film in a bucket of water to develop it. Thankfully, no footage was lost. One of the other annoying things was random sailboats drifting into the shot. You're probably thinking, they could have just turned their boats to face a different direction. According to Spielberg and the crew's calculations, it actually would have taken longer to do that due to the boats being anchored during the static shots, than to wait for the sailboat to leave the frame of the shot. Other little annoying things were cast and crew getting seasick and sunburnt, and Robert Shaw having a jealous grudge and, in the words of Richard Dreyfuss, being unnecessarily competitive towards Dreyfuss and others. Shaw also fled to Canada to avoid paying taxes and went on alcohol benders. Pissed off crew members nicknamed the movie Flaws. But the most annoying problem of all were the mechanical sharks. They kept breaking down because of too much salt water getting into the pneumatic hoses, the skin of the shark corroding, and electrolysis. Often on set, through radio walkie-talkies, the most repeated phrase was,
"The shark is not working. The shark is not working. Repeat, the shark is not working."
The skin of the mechanical sharks were made up of non-absorbent neoprene foam that soaked up the salt water, turning the sharks into giant water balloons, roughly 4 decades before the slow-mo guys made giant water balloons popular. The special effects crew worked their asses off just to make sure the sharks functioned, somewhat. Because of this, it led to delays in extending and filming, going over budget, and the script and scenes constantly being refined to hint at the shark's presence. This also led to the acting becoming more pivotal, to really make the audience feel like, hey, this is one big scary motherfucking shark. To quote Spielberg, "The more fake the shark looked in the water, the more my anxiety told me to heighten the naturalism of the performances." He thought his film career was over because of this. Thankfully, the special effects crew eventually got the sharks working, about 3 months into filming. What was supposed to be a 2-month shoot turned into a 4 or 5 month shoot. Each day of filming was a 12-hour workday, and on a calculated average, according to Spielberg, only 4 hours of the day were spent filming, and each ranged from good, average, and bad, depending on how many scenes were filmed on those days. This was mostly for filming in the open water. Any filming on land must have been a breath of fresh air. To save the film somewhat, real sharks would be filmed by Australian shark expert Ron Taylor and his filmmaker wife Valerie Taylor, who I mentioned earlier. They wanted Peter Gimble, who worked with the Taylors on Blue Water White Death, to get involved with Jaws, but due to creative disagreements, he didn't get involved. Normally, great white sharks are between 11 to 16 feet long. Jaws was depicted to be 25 feet long.
3 tons on them.
Spielberg got the idea to use a shorter actor in a miniature shark cage for the scene with Hooper in the cage, to make the real great white shark look bigger than it really was. Carl Rizzo, being only 4'9", was the actor chosen for this particular shoot to be Dreyfuss's stunt double. The day Rizzo went in to be interviewed for this gig, he got into a car accident in front of the main gate at Universal Lot. In fear of being late and wanting this job, he left the scene of the accident and came to the interview all busted up. Spielberg sent him back to fill out reports, but was amazed and impressed by Rizzo's commitment and hired him. Rizzo didn't really know what he was getting himself into, since he was used to filling in as a stunt double for children and had never done anything underwater, let alone with sharks. They sent him to Australia, and that's when the fear kicked in. And rightfully so. They had 2 small dummies the same size as Rizzo for when the sharks attacked the cage. Obviously a dummy's gonna look stiff and not lifelike. That's why Carl was hired. Filming for this portion of production was for a week, due to trying to get the shark to attack the cage. Sharks normally don't do that. This crew was also working with, and I say working with loosely, 3 sharks. One of those sharks was more of the alpha of the trio. We'll call him Mo. Mo went over to the cage, got his nose stuck in the brindle of the boat that was holding the cage, and went crazy. Ow! Ow, my nose! The shark ended up getting tangled briefly, breaking the cage from the boat, and ended up floating down to the bottom of the sea. Luckily, the shark was okay. The tailors got the footage of the cage being attacked, and thankfully, Carl Rizzo was not in the cage during the shot. However, there was no dummy in the cage, which would have been troublesome for Spielberg and the crew. They loved this footage and wanted to use it for the film, but had to change things up. The script following the novel had Hooper killed by the shark during the scene. They had actually filmed an alternate scene as a backup of Hooper escaping safely and hiding from the shark, making the footage from Australia usable for the film. Spielberg decided not to be on set for the filming of the final scene. He had too much paranoia and had also heard a rumor that the crew was going to throw him overboard. And it was because of this, he now has a tradition where he takes the day off when the final scene of whatever movie he's working on is being filmed. Some of the last things filmed for production were the underwater scenes at the MGM water tank, with future Michael Myers stuntman and actor Dick Warlock, and stuntman Frank James Sparks as the fake Shemps, thanks Sam Raimi for coining this term, for Richard Dreyfuss in the cage attack scene. One of the nights while in production, there was a buffet dinner event. The crew had been on Martha's Vineyard for 4 months, and they were starting to become a little stir-crazy. Roy Scheider ended up starting a food fight with Spielberg and Richard Dreyfuss at this dinner event, just to ease the tension and stress on set. This was way before John Belushi started a food fight in Animal House. Partial editing was being done during the filming of Jaws by Verna Fields, nicknamed Mother Cutter for being like the mother of the crew, who had little to no footage to edit. Once principal photography was completed, Fields had a rough cut of the movie up until the shark hunt. There was one reshoot for the scene where Hooper discovered Ben Gardner's severed head underwater. It was actually shot in Verna Fields' own swimming pool, with Spielberg paying $3,000 out of his own money to film it, because Universal wouldn't give him money. There was also ADR that they had to do, in particular Chrissy's death scene. How did they do it? Spielberg poured water onto Susan's face while she screamed some of Chrissy's lines. John Williams was picked to score music for Jaws, as previously he scored music for Spielberg's film Sugarland Express. Williams was inspired by the music scores from pirate movies, giving Jaws a bit of a sea shanty feel. But what really stood out was his suspenseful, alternating 2-note theme that represents when the shark is lurking or about to appear. His placement for music in this film is just perfect. Even the scenes where you think the shark is near, it's not, if the music is not playing. Unless the crew and even John Williams with his score decides to surprise you when you least expect it. Spielberg was expecting an eerie, melodic sort of outer space music, but underwater. When Spielberg heard the theme to Jaws for the first time,
And at first I began to laugh. I thought he had a great sense of humor. I thought he was putting me on.
but afterwards, the theme started to grow on him, and according to Spielberg, without Williams' score, the film would have only been half as successful. This was also the film that jump-started John Williams' career in score and film. There were 3 test screenings of the film between March and April 1975, alongside with the release of the novel. One of the first screenings was a rough cut of Jaws with no music score and a sequence missing, over at a projection room in Universal Studios. David Brown recalls nobody reacting during the screening. Again, this was a rough cut missing important elements of the film. By the next 2 screenings, it captivated and scared the shit out of the audience. Plans did change, though, for its theatrical release. Lou Weiserman, a former chairman of Universal, attended one of these screenings and ordered the film's theatrical release to be cut down from 900 to a little over 400 theaters. Universal also wanted Jaws to get a PG rating on behalf of financiers and distributors. Jaws would have gotten an R rating had Universal not asked Spielberg to cut a couple frames from the severed leg falling to the bottom of the ocean. Jaws was released on June 20th, 1975 to theaters between America and Canada, and throughout that summer, it became a box office success. It expanded first to 700 theaters, and then eventually more than 900 theaters, with the film eventually crossing overseas for more to become thalassophobic. Marketing was what helped the movie, not just ads and posters, but actual TV ads, which was a rare occurrence at the time. Not so rare these days, especially those claiming to be the #1 movie in America. Is it really though? And here we are 50 years later. From that time to now, there were sequels because the higher-ups in Hollywood like to milk everyone's piggy banks, and really bad shark movies were made inspired by Jaws. I'm talking about you, Sharknado. There was also a Jaws ride at Universal Studios theme park and video games, like the NES game, which is one of the most boring games I've ever played. But compared to Desert Bus, it's a hell of a lot better. This movie was not only about the theme of confronting fears, but looking at it from the behind-the-scenes POV, it was about the will to keep going when things are going downhill. To quote Isaac Brock from Modest Mouse, no pun intended. This was the movie that made you scared to go swimming in the ocean, as well as your own swimming pool. I would say the bathtub, but that's Freddy Krueger's job. And if it wasn't for those barely functioning mechanical sharks breaking down, leading to the shark being hinted at for most of the film, then we wouldn't have gotten one of the best movies ever made. Hey now, you didn't mean what you said by that, did you? No, dude, I meant what I said. Oh, come on, man. You were joking, right? You didn't mean that. I'm not joking, dude. I meant what I said about those 3 mechanical sharks. You shouldn't have said that. What are you gonna do about it? You're just a shark puppet. You ain't gonna do shit. Son of a bitch, puppet. A little help over here, please.